Welcome to Title Unboxed. With more than 40 years of experience in the fight game, our host, Doug Ward, will be covering every corner of the ring as we get comfortable between the ropes. We'll talk with both the lesser knowns and the legends, discuss boxing's rich history and current state of the game. We'll also look at today's latest innovations, equipment breakdowns, and insights you won't uncover anywhere else. Join us now as we take a look inside Title Unboxed.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Title Unboxed. I'm your host, Doug Ward, and I'm excited to introduce you to one of the fastest rising stars in boxing. He is a highly decorated amateur and is currently one of the hottest, undefeated middleweight prospects on the scene. While the big names are bickering over the big bucks, this young buck is gaining attention and banking on the future. You may have seen him featured on the nationally televised Premier Boxing Championships. If you haven't, you're missing out on one of today's brightest talents. He's PBC's 2019 Prospect of the Year. Welcome, Joey Spencer. Joey, thanks for talking to us today.
Absolutely.
We just saw you in August. Spectacular win against Sean West.
Thank you.
That was the first fight since all this whole quarantine thing and all this went down. So what was that like going into the bubble, as they say? A little bit different environment, different setting, fighting in front of fake people and all that. So what was that experience like?
It was very different. You know, the fight itself wasn't really the hard part. The fight was, more just like a sparring session because I didn't have, fans in there. So it was more like, what we do 3 times a week, leading up in training camp. So that was pretty normal. The thing that was weird was obviously just being in the bubble and not having my family with me and going out a week ahead and basically just being stuck in the hotel room, really not even being able to go down to the lobby. We had to pack all of our food and meals because they feed you when you're there. So we flew all of our food out there because we make weight a certain way and refuel a certain way after the weigh-in, and we weren't going to, just use their food, what they gave us. So it was just very different, and it was also very weird not having my family there because usually I have a pretty big crew when I go out to a fight. So it was weird just being me, my dad, and my assistant coach, Jim. So, that was the only weird part about it. The fight was, pretty standard. Yeah.
Well, you're used to a big cheering section. You have a big fan following.
I did. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I also have a big family is what I thought you were going to say. So, I do. Yeah. I usually have a good section.
Was it hard to get up for that kind of thing, or it didn't make any difference? Once you're in the fight, and
no, I never really even have a hard time getting up for a sparring session really. So it was, like I said, pretty standard. I went out there, had a job to do and, a goal. So I didn't have too hard of a time motivating myself to get in there and fight, especially after so much time off. I was just so excited to get in there.
I'll bet. Well, you're really lucky in the way this all went down. You had a fairly busy 2019.
Yep.
You fought, 4 times?
Yep.
And then you fought in January before all this went down. And then you were one of the first fights back when people started having shows again. So that was really fortunate for you. You didn't have an enormous amount of downtime.
Yeah, definitely. PBC really takes care of me, and they put me up. As soon as it was time to fight, I was able to fight pretty early on. So
that's awesome. You got that kind of support.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned your family. How big's your family, and where do you fall in the lineup?
So as far as my immediate family, it's 5. So, I got me, my dad, my mom, my sister, and Mikhail. So 6 total with me. And so I'm right in the middle. My brother's the youngest. My sister's the oldest. And then, So you
had a big sister looking out for you.
Yeah, definitely. She handles a lot for me. She does a lot. She handles all my social media, all my, media stuff. And when we work with sponsors, she helps me reach out and form the emails and, negotiate. And she does a lot of stuff for me. So that's definitely. And then my wife, Tabitha, she does a lot for me as well. She takes care of me in pretty much every way during training camp as far as, meals and cooking and making sure that I'm where I'm supposed to be, taking my supplements at the right time, things like that. My dad wears a lot of hats. He does everything, and so does my mom. So then they just do, whatever. They don't really have a job description. It's just, anything and everything that they can possibly do for me. So,
That's great to have that built-in support system, though, because your family you can always trust. They're the ones that are going to look out for you and and do the things you would want them to do, you know?
Absolutely. I didn't even mention my little brother. My little brother takes the majority of he's gotten into photography in the last year. He's also a heck of a fighter, but he's a heck of a fighter. He'll be turning pro soon. But then he got into photography, and I have my photographer is Trap Photos, who comes to my fights, and she works a lot with pros.
Yep.
And then he got into photography, but she's in California, so I'm in Michigan. He got into photography and got really good at it. So now he's taking all kinds of pictures for me for my social media and stuff. So I've just got a whole family of people that do a lot of different things. We all work together. So.
Oh, that's great. You get that little talent pool.
Definitely.
To take care of you and do all that. That's perfect.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about your dad a little bit. He's the one that got you into all this. He was an amateur fighter himself.
Yes.
Right. So tell me a little bit about how you got started, like what maybe your first recollection of him fighting was, and you know, what emotion that evoked in you that made you want to be a fighter.
So yeah, my dad, it was just right around the time that I was like old enough to start to understand that my dad, he was an amateur when he was younger, but then he, you know, picked it back up after college and was just fighting amateur fights and Golden Gloves and things like that. And that was right around the time that I was 4 or 5. And so I can understand, and, you know, it was just at that point where I started wanting to do whatever my dad was doing. We were, you know, he was my best friend, and just, I wanted to be just like him. So I remember the earliest memory of him fighting I had was I remember being at one of his Golden Glove fights. I remember very little about it, but I do remember being there and watching the fight and things like that. So it was just ingrained in me. And then when I was, you know, it's all I remember ever wanting to do. So then as I got older, I just continued to you know, take the steps in the direction of where I wanted to go. And my dad helped me do that. He saw that I wanted to do it. So naturally he was like, all right, well then we're going to do it the best way that we can. And we started traveling all over the state and just learning as we went. You know, my dad had amateur experience, but he didn't have a lot of coaching experience. And he spent the next several years just rubbing shoulders with every coach in Michigan, you know, excluding pretty much nobody, and taking me along the way, and me sparring with everybody in Michigan, you know, every weekend, every week we were somewhere, whether it was an hour away or 3 hours away, we were going and we were sparring, training, fighting, you know, doing whatever we needed to do. And then eventually national championships started coming around, and I was old enough or you know, good enough to go do that. And then I just started winning them, and I just kept going from there. And so, yep, that was the beginning stages of everything.
You're basically raised in the gym, which I've always felt like you get the Mayweathers, you get the guys. I know my own kids, as I train them, they were born into the sport. I think you get a little bit of a competitive edge because it becomes so natural. It's nothing's foreign to you. You absorb it on a daily basis. So everything just comes a little bit more natural.
Yeah. I mean, I was learning to fight as almost, you know, not long after I was learning to walk, really. So, I mean, it's pretty much comes that way. Not that it's not extremely difficult, but I can only imagine how this is as difficult of a sport it is. I would hate to be someone who came into it a few years ago, you know, or 4 or 5 years ago. You know, I've been doing this for 15 years. So it's definitely a good advantage to have.
Yeah, for sure. And just even have the idea of having your dad in your corner. I mean, that to me, there's always a shorthand with the father-son relationship. When it works well, it's spot on.
Yes, that's the thing about it. A lot of times it doesn't work, but when it does, it's usually the best relationship, you know, coach fighter relationship you can have. You know, if you can get it to work, and we definitely have. And I couldn't imagine having anybody else in my corner.
Yeah, well, it's just an extra level of comfort knowing that he's always going to have your best interest at heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you won your first national title at what, 9?
Yeah, when I was 9. Or no, when I was 10 was
10.
My first national.
Which one was that?
That was the ringside. The ringside, they call it the World Championship, but it's pretty much the national championship. And I won. I had a deep bracket, like 4 kids in my bracket.
Yeah.
I remember that was still like a really good memory of mine. I remember it like it was yesterday, the first one that I won. I mean,
I'll bet.
Really tough kids in the bracket, and I had to really dig down, and we still have all the film somewhere, but that was definitely a good memory.
Made it all that much better, right?
Definitely, yeah.
So how many national titles total did you earn through your amateur career? You had about 100 fights?
Yeah, I did, and I had 9 national championships. Yep.
9 national championships. And you started, I mean, your pro debut was on a major stage. It was Mandalay Bay, televised, the whole deal. So that, I mean, your amateur experience really allowed you to get up on the main stage from the very get-go and
Definitely.
perform like you did, don't you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that my amateur experience definitely helped me. I think that that was, one of the reasons that I was able to swallow, that type of pressure coming in out of nowhere and fighting in Mandalay Bay. And that was early on in the card. But my the second fight, I was on FS1. And then the third fight, I was, coming up coming into the ring right before the main event, which was Berto and Devin Alexander. Crowd full, almost sold out. Regular Fox, and I'm just 18 years old, and things were moving really quickly. So that was a lot of pressure, a lot of things, and I had to overcome that, but I was able to rely and lean back on my amateur experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely I was thrown into all this, I was thrown into all this, and it was just like sink or swim kind of.
Yeah.
And but I have a really good team, and Premier Boxing really just supports me. And ever since the beginning, they wanted to put me in the best position to be out there and be seen by the most people possible. So I'm blessed, and now I'm getting comfortable as a pro and in the ring, and I'm starting to take my experience that I'm learning, that I'm getting as a pro, and it's really starting to pay off.
What a learning experience, though. I mean, you first
Absolutely.
time out, and you're surrounded by these world champions. And
Absolutely.
now, when you went out and started training with Virgil Hunter
Yep.
and Andre Ward, was that prior to your first fight, or did that evolve somewhere during your career?
I moved out there when I was 16. When I was 16 years old, I was working with a physical therapist named Lisa,
Mm-hmm.
and she was Andre Ward's physical therapist. And we were out there just to get some training, get some work, some different strength training and things. And right before we were supposed to leave, we were out there for a summer. We were out there for 3 months or so working with her.
Wow.
And right before we were supposed to leave, she said that she could get us into spar in Virgil's gym and just, introduce us and stuff. And that was a dream for mine, because Andre Ward was my favorite fighter growing up by far.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to go over to the gym, whether he was there or not. It would have been great to go spar. So Virgil was there. He watched me spar. And then the next day he invited me and my dad to stay permanently
how
and
cool.
just be part of the gym.
Wow.
And we're from Linden, Michigan. Never imagined moving out to California ever, in my life. And we were just supposed to be out there in Cali for a summer doing some training. And we decided to take the opportunity. And it was an opportunity too good to pass up. And I still don't believe that I'd be in as good a position as I am as a pro now, as far as my management and working with Al Heyman. And if I didn't go out with Virgil, Virgil was the one who introduced me to Al Heyman and Louis DeCubis, and, called their people and put in the good word for me. And there was just so many different, things that I was able to learn out there.
Yeah.
I still, owe so much to Virg.
Well, to be in that environment, let alone training with the Bertos, the Amir Khan,
Yes.
Andre Ward, of course.
Yes.
I mean, just the stuff you soak in on a daily basis, being behind the scenes, not when the
Absolutely.
cameras are rolling and everybody's there and there's performances going on, but day to day,
For sure.
Gaining all that knowledge, that had to be just monumental.
Definitely. Yeah. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about when I watched Andre Ward train for Kovalev 1 and Kovalev 2, and every day, every single day watching him train ins and out, watching his sparring sessions, every single day watching his media workouts, and just coming in, being 16 and being a couple years away from turning pro. I knew it was big when I was seeing it happen in my life, but I don't even know if I realized how, big a role it would play as going down the line. 'Cause I still measure myself in my training according to what I saw in his camp.
Well, it's like anything else. The more mature you get, the more sophisticated, the more knowledgeable you get in the game, you realize, how much that really impacted you and your career and, what you're doing as a fighter.
Definitely.
Yeah. Andre Ward, I mean, I'm with you. He's got to be, for me, I still think he's one of the most underrated middleweights and light heavyweights.
Absolutely.
Ever. I don't know why he's not gotten the acclaim he should have. I think probably because he's kind of soft-spoken. He's not a trash talker. He's very religious, which is great, but I think that's polarizing in some cases. But the things he's accomplished in the sport, I mean, someday the historians will look back and go, oh my gosh, that's one of the greatest fighters of all time.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
What do you think of like maybe one or two things you picked up from him throughout your experiences in training camp, sparring sessions that you really hang on to and maybe could pass on to other fighters?
There's just a difference in his work ethic than anybody else. And not everybody that I had been around, they train like pros and they train like professionals and they work extremely hard. But Andre Ward, he's just a different type of focus. It's a different type of focus when he's training for a fight. There's no getting through, his mental barrier when he's in the gym. When he's in the gym training, just everything else takes a second place, and he's just it's just him and whatever he's punching at. It's him or the sparring partner, him or the heavy bag. He's just, if he's on a heavy bag, it's like he's fighting. It's like he's fighting that heavy bag. It's not just punching that heavy bag. He's fighting it, and nothing breaks that. There's no talking about other things. It's just a very specific focus and attitude and mindset that he has that I could imagine Michael Jordan having, or Floyd Mayweather, or Muhammad Ali. The real great ones, he had that's something. And there's definitely a difference between that and maybe less than that, or a good fighter, but he's an all-time great fighter, like you said.
Great fighter, yeah. Just that intensity and level of concentration.
Yes, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, amazing. Great fighter. So from there, how often do you go and train with Andre Ward and those guys out there? Is it the last time I was out there, periodically?
I try to do it every time I fight in California. I try to go out there early and go to his gym. I fought in Cali 2 fights ago and went out there. This last time I wasn't able to, even though it was in Cali, just because of all the COVID stuff. Right. We weren't able to. But when I fight in Cali, I try to make it a point to make sure I go out a few weeks early and train there.
Yeah. I remember seeing an interview with him, or I think he was given actually a class session to a group of people, and he talked about the level of responsibility as a fighter, not just what you're doing in training camp, but also how much your life outside the ring plays into it. Nutrition, living your life right, doing the right things. Is that something he talked about a lot in training camps and when you were with him?
Well, absolutely. It's just something you pick up from him, definitely. And it's something that I've kind of based my whole career off of is, when I'm not training for a fight right now, but I train, 5 times a week right now, and I stay in a good position. You don't want to overtrain, but I stay training so that once it's time to start training camp, I can just go another level higher. A lot of guys just only get back to the point where they were in the last camp because they stopped training for 6 weeks. You want to be in a position where you can go higher than you were in the last camp. And that's something that Virgil talked a lot about, staying at 70%. So you can go to 110% when you're in the gym and not just get back to 80% before a fight. And that's what a lot of guys end up at. They end up at 80% always, instead of being, maintaining 70% and going back up to 100. Because they go to 0 and then try to get back up as high as they can. It's just, it doesn't work that way. So that's something that I definitely picked up on.
Yeah. I mean, it's actually easier to stay in shape than to get in shape, to start from ground zero.
100%.
Too many guys deal with weight issues and all that stuff during the training camp. That should not be something the issue is starting training camp.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a big difference between the Mayweathers and the Andre Wards is they are in shape all the time.
100%.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your boxing style. Who do you think your biggest influence are aside from Andre Ward? How much of your style has your dad played into it? And you're a tremendous inside fighter. I talked to Duran about this a couple episodes ago about his ability to stay in the pocket, to hit and not get hit. And a lot of fighters haven't mastered that. And I think you're well on your way to doing that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think the guys that have influenced me a lot is I watched a lot of Miguel Cotto when I was younger. I watched a lot of Andre Ward, as I said. I watched a lot of Canelo as he's been growing up. He's a young fighter, so me being a young fighter, and then also we kind of have similar body types, and I see a lot of things that I can pick up from him, so I try to pick up a lot from him. Floyd Mayweather, definitely I watch a lot of. I pick out what I can of him. He's such a unique style, but there's a lot of things that you can pick up from him, regardless of who you are. So those are a few guys that I watched a lot of growing up.
So you watch a lot of fighters. You study the sport.
Definitely, absolutely.
Some fighters don't. They're like, I don't watch boxing. I don't watch other fighters. There's not much I'm just influence myself, and that's enough. But I think you can absorb things and pick things up just by watching.
Absolutely. I mean, even just situationally, you can see how people dealt with certain situations in a fight. You don't have to be watching them to pattern your whole style after them. It's just if you're in a situation where you're in a fight and you get cut for the first time, but you watched how, you know, Mayweather dealt with it when he got cut the first time, or, you know, if you're in there with a, you know, a real tough pressure fighter and you can think about, and you're super tired and you think about what Leonard did when he was super tired, when he got real tired against Hagler and, you know, still won the fight. So there's just situations that you can, you know, find yourself in that you've already seen.
Yeah. And once even if you've seen somebody else experience that, you know, it's almost as good as going through it yourself if you're able to glom onto it well enough.
Absolutely. Definitely.
Now, something I thought was interesting as I was going through some of the materials and just looking back at your career a little bit. You were homeschooled.
Yes. Yep.
Now, were you homeschooled as a child or as when you got into high school and like as you got older?
So I was homeschooled from sophomore year through senior year, and sophomore year was when I made the USA team, and we started traveling and things, and I was just gone a lot, so it just ended up being a little bit too difficult to maintain school and not do it on my own, so we pulled out at that point.
So it was out of necessity, really?
Yeah, it was out of necessity. From that point, I went to Linden schools through middle school, all the way through middle school, and then freshman year.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting because I homeschooled all my kids.
Okay, gotcha.
Oh, they started a little younger than that, but it was part of it was also for the same reason. You know, the boys were boxing, so I wanted them to be able to focus on that and not be sitting all day in school, and we could be able to make our own schedule and work around it the best we could.
Absolutely, it definitely was a big plus, just being able to not worry about school schedule and being able to make our own.
Well, and if you're disciplined, you know, you learn that in the gym. It certainly you know bleeds off into the other things you're doing.
Yep, absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's go back. I want to talk a little bit more about your dad. So again, he's your primary trainer.
Yes.
Now, how did he pick up? You said he didn't start out as a boxing trainer. He started out as a boxer.
Yep.
So has he talked to you about how he made that transition? Because a lot of guys start that way and they're fighters and then they become coaches, but that doesn't necessarily make you a good coach. And some boxers aren't good coaches, but others are. Your dad obviously is, just based on your style, your success, and how technically sound you are. So has he talked at all about what he did and what his process was?
Well, he was just a humble learner, and it didn't matter where he was. You know, he just took a humble approach and went all across the state, like I said, to start, and just got with all the best coaches. And we were around some really good coaches. I mean, guys that are undefeated pros where I'm at, you know, kind of around the same point that I'm at today, whether it be Jason Crutchfield, Clarissa Shields, original trainer, or the one who built her from scratch, Leon Lawson. He's Leon Lawson is also his son, Leon Lawson III, and he is now, I think, 14 or 15-0. He's like my brother. He's my best friend, and we traveled around when I'm saying we traveled around Michigan, we did a lot of that together. But they were a lot more experienced than us when we came in, because he's a year older than us and his dad had been coaching for quite a while at that point. So he rubbed off on my dad quite a bit. Otha Jones, Sr., or Otha Jones II. He is a great coach and coached his son. We were on the junior Olympic team together, and they were over in Toledo, Ohio. So we spent a lot of time over in Toledo with them. Just picking up different things from different coaches and different styles. It all played a big role in our style and just my dad's coaching style. And then obviously going and being Virgil Hunter's, you know, main assistant for 3 years was priceless. So he's just had a lot of opportunities to be around some of the best. And it's not even just me. My dad really, what proves my dad's coaching pedigree is not just me, but when you guys see my little brother come, he's not my biological little brother. He's my adopted little brother. And you should see how he fights. It's unbelievable. And he's coming up and he's going to be pro here in the next couple of years, and he'll sign with the same people that I signed with, and he'll have that same platform. And we're going to see, you know, not just my dad's handiwork, not just in me, but in someone else who doesn't even share his genes. So it's not even like it's just, he just got too, you know, well, you know, it's like you could just make a point like, oh, they just got good genes and they're just
Right.
good athletes. We're two different, gene pools, and Kel can really fight, and we'll actually be the first non-biological brothers to win a world championship under the same coach, under our father. So
that'll be cool.
That's something that is just will be really cool to, give my dad some good credit, and it'll really prove what kind of coach he is.
Right. So how old is Mikkel then?
He's 16.
And where is he at in his career as far as experience?
So he's a four-time national champion. He's got about 65 amateur fights, and he, trained next to all of them the whole time I was in Cali. Obviously, he was with me. Does every training camp with me. It's getting to the point where he's sparring the same sparring partners I am. Yeah. He's gotten bigger now, and he's definitely something to watch. So,
what weight is he fighting at?
He'll probably start off his career at 140. He'll probably he's taller than me by like 2 inches, but he's leaner, so he'll probably start at 140.
Yeah, nice. Yep. Well, it's fun when you keep it in the family.
Absolutely, definitely. Yep.
So I want to talk a little bit about, I think through watching your fights, you've stopped a lot of guys. I didn't count how many, but a lot of them with body punching. Your body attack and your body head mixing it up is ferocious. Where'd that come from? Is that something your dad instilled from you from the beginning? Is it something you saw somewhere? Because you do it at a level that you don't see a lot of young guys doing, and even some seasoned professionals. But you're stopping guys with body shots.
I appreciate it. Again, I go back to the guys that I watched, like Miguel Cotto. It's he was a ferocious body puncher, and I always looked up to that and wanted to pattern myself off that. And I just saw how effective it is. It doesn't matter how strong somebody is. You hit them, with a couple real well-placed body shots, and it's hard to stand up to. They can have the best chin in the world. It doesn't really matter if you can hit them in the right spot in the body. So that's the way that I wanted to handle myself in the ring. And I just know that I've always got that in my back pocket. No matter how tough somebody is, I know my body shots are going to do damage. Yeah. And they always have. It doesn't matter who I'm sparring with, fighting with, as long as I can hit them with the body shots that I can throw, I know that it'll slow them down. So
yeah. Well, you can shake off a headshot. It's tough to shake off those body shots.
100%. 100%.
Breaks the guys down.
Definitely.
Well, Joey, you are an exciting prospect. You're fun to watch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your fan base is growing, and I get excited every time you step in the ring. Before we wrap up here, you want to tell all of our title fans, followers, listeners, and viewers where they can follow you on social media and keep up with your career?
Follow me on Instagram at Joey D. Spencer and on Twitter at JSNation_. And I really appreciate you guys. I've been a big fan of Title for a long time, so I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you so much. Title family, keep your eyes on this young man and give Joey all your love and support while he makes his way towards a world championship. Joey, you're going to come back when you have that world title belt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. I promise.
Can't wait for it. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you, man.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Later. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Title Unboxed. If you're anything like me, you can never get too much boxing. So if you'd like to watch more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our Title Boxing YouTube page.